Chris Hall, South Dakota Game Fish, out here on beautiful Deerfield Lake near Hill City. Game Fish and Parks fisheries managers get a lot of requests in a given year about how to manage certain resources. One of the probably biggest requests that we get from western South Dakota anglers is to stock walleyes in some of our Black Hills reservoirs. I got to sit down with Jake Davis, who's the Black Hills Regional Fish Manager, and discuss some of the options, some of the ideas, and some of the biology behind doing just that.
Well, this is something that has come up more and more over recent years. When we've had a lot of our open houses or chances to interact with the public, especially while we were developing our most recent management plans, one of the topics that kept coming up was expanding the fishing opportunities within the region, and primarily a lot of those have been focused on walleye within the Black Hills as options for anglers.
Jake, when we're talking about walleyes and lakes, what are you looking for? Are there 3 or 4 specific things that you're looking for the possibility of the existence of a walleye?
Absolutely, and one of the first things I look for is that the habitat's there. So some of the things that we'll look at within a certain system might be, are the temperature requirements there for a walleye to survive? Additionally, is there going to be dissolved oxygen in the water for them? On top of that, we really want to make sure they have something to eat. So we got to look at what we have for a prey base within that lake to make sure that essentially they have a decent chance of surviving.
So if I told you we wanted walleyes I wanted walleyes in these area lakes, do those conditions exist?
They do, and what we would do is look at each of the 4, what we would consider the big 4 in the Black Hills. We'd look at each of those independently, and that would be Stockade, Sheridan, Deerfield, and Pactola reservoirs. And when we look at them, say for example, if you look at Stockade or Sheridan or even Deerfield, we have the temperature requirements, we have dissolved oxygen within the water, we have fish species that are already present, and we have yellow perch, which we already know is a main prey fish for walleyes. On top of that, though, we'd want to look at what we have for established fisheries within those systems just to make sure that walleye wouldn't have a negative impact on those, because we know we already have popular fisheries within those systems. And so when we look at that, we want to make sure that in the case of yellow perch, that the walleye, they're not going to have a negative impact on them because we know that they'll be preying on them quite heavily. Additionally, when we look at a system like Deerfield, we just stock that with large adult lake trout to try and create a second lake trout fishery within the state. We want to make sure that walleye don't have any negative impacts on those lake trout. The reason we went with lake trout in Deerfield Reservoir is because we have a lake trout fishery in Pactola Reservoir, and it's quite popular. However, it's our only lake trout fishery in the state, so we wanted to provide a second lake trout fishery. And when we look at our habitat requirements, especially water temperature, Deerfield is really the only other option that we have within the state. Pactola is a little bit different because unlike the other 3, we don't have a perch that would act as a forage base. Instead, what we have would be rainbow smelt. And we know from Lake Oahe that rainbow smelt are a very important prey source for walleyes. That being said, they're also very important to our lake trout in there. So that's something we always need to consider as well when we talked about making sure that walleyes don't affect our established fisheries. And so there would be some potential for competition for that prey base between walleye and potentially lake trout as well.
Talk about your popular fisheries, and talk a little bit about what you see out there now for current fishing activity in a given year.
Absolutely. Well, they are quite popular fisheries, and when we look at it, they're actually pretty small fisheries. I mean, they may be large Black Hills reservoirs, but when you compare them to a lot of other systems on the statewide level, they're really quite small. And so on average, right now we already see potentially 6 times the amount of pressure per acre that we see on some of our other systems in the western South Dakota, like Belle Fourche Reservoir or Angostura Reservoir, for example.
So, put together this survey. What are you looking for? What are you hoping for with this survey?
Well, really, we just want to get input from the public. So we know we have our users out there. We've collected a lot of information, whether it's through angler use surveys, internet surveys, our open houses. We've had small group meetings, but we really want to make sure that we're covering all our bases, and so we're just looking for people to give us their thoughts and opinions on walleye within the Black Hills, within these certain fisheries, and just so we can get a better idea on really what our angler wants and desires are.
So there you have it. Some of the biology, some of the ins and outs, if you will, about the possibility of stocking walleyes in Black Hills reservoirs. We encourage you to take the survey. Click on the link on your screen right now. Make your voice heard. Your opinion does matter, and it does come into a big part of the decisions that not only fish managers but game managers make in South Dakota too. Until then, I encourage you to take the survey, get out and enjoy South Dakota's outdoors.